This word right here, jihad, we hear it oftentimes associated with Islam. However, that word does not mean holy war like many people think. It actually means to struggle or to strive. And in a religious context, it means the struggle that one faces to submit their will to the will of God. Speaking of submission, Islam means submission. And that submission, of course, is surrendering to God's will. This word Islam also derived from the Arabic word salam, which means peace. And Muslim means anyone or anything that surrenders itself to the will of God. By that definition, it doesn't just include humans, it also includes animals and plants. Many of you may know this one already. There are two main sects to the religion of Islam. We have the Sunnis and the Shiites. One of the main differences between the Sunnis and Shiites is their beliefs about who the leaders were following the death of the Prophet Muhammad. The Sunni, which comes from the Arabic word tradition, they accepted the succession of Muhammad's elected successors.
Sunni Muslims are very strict adherents to the way of life.
And Shiite, which comes from the Arabic word for fraction, they're also known as Shia Muslims. They believe that the leaders must be descendants of the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and her husband Caliph Ali. And you know what, that actually leads us to this episode's question, and that is, what is your religion? Let me know down there. And if you don't identify with any religion, let me also know that. And guys, let's try to not fight down there. You know, we could have various different beliefs, but we can still be respectful. Okay, so moving on. Now, there are 5 pillars of Islam that Muslims follow. First up, we have the Shahada, and that's the statement of faith that all Muslims recite at least once in their lifetime. Then we have the Salat or the Salah, and this is a daily ritual prayer of faith done 5 times a day. Zakat, this is a tax paid to benefit the poor or those in need. And then we have Psalm, this is the fast done during the month of Ramadan. And finally, Hajj, and this is a pilgrimage that every Muslim must do at least once in their lifetime if they can afford it. And this pilgrimage is to the holy city of Mecca, which is located in modern-day Saudi Arabia. Now, the pilgrimage begins on the 7th or 8th day of the last month of the Islamic lunar calendar and ends on the 12th day of that same month. The name of the shrine located in Mecca where they visit during the pilgrimage or Hajj is called Kaaba, and it's considered to be the most holy place for Muslims.
Here where the temperature sometimes soars above 120 degrees, shade can feel like the soothing hand of God.
Now, did you know that Allah has 99 names in the Quran? Muslims believe that Allah or God revealed 99 names or attributes of himself, and it's through these 99 names that one can get to know him. A few of those names include Ar-Rahman, meaning the merciful, Al-Alim, the all-knowing, the omniscient, Al-Wali, the protecting friend, patron, and helper, and Ar-Razak, the ever-providing. So we already know that the amount of people that identify as Muslim is 23% of the world's population. But which part of the world has the largest amount of Muslims? Well, that country is Indonesia. There are 120 million Muslims in Indonesia, followed by Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. However, future projections believe that by the year 2050, India is going to have the largest amount of Muslims. Islam also shares many religious figures and historical events with Judaism and Christianity. Muslims consider Jesus to be a prophet in Islam, and the Quran mentions Jesus in several verses, as well as the prophet Moses and several others. Now, I mentioned fasting on Ramadan a little bit earlier in this video, but just to give you a little bit more detail on that, Muslims fast for 30 days every year for Ramadan, which of course is one of the 5 pillars of Islam.
It is believed to be the toughest of all fasts, and its end is celebrated on Eid.
But why do they fast? Well, I'm sure that many of them do it for their own personal reasons, but most commonly, Muslims fast to experience what it feels like to be poor and hungry and to focus on their own spiritual journey. Alright, so since 1988, 8 countries have had Muslim women as their heads of state. These countries include Turkey, Indonesia, Senegal, Kosovo, Kyrgyzstan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Mauritius. Also, many other Muslim countries like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Afghanistan have a higher percentage of women in national elected offices than the United States. Now, I'm sure the rest of you who may not be Muslim, just like me, have heard this term, Assalamu alaikum. That phrase right there means peace be upon you. And that's what I wish for every single one of you watching this video, peace upon you. Too much fighting in the world, you can only really wish for peace anyways. Starting with number 10, the 5 pillars. Okay, well, maybe everybody knew this, even non-Muslims, but either way, I'm gonna go over them again just in case viewers out there maybe watching that are like, what? 5 pillars of Islam, huh? Well, the first pillar is the Shahada, which is a declaration of faith, and someone is to say that there is no God except Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. And that's pretty much the basic requirement for being a Muslim. And the second pillar though is Salah, which consists of the 5 daily prayers offered to God as an act of worship. Then the third pillar is Zakah, which is a religious obligation that requires a certain amount of charitable givings to be made on an annual basis. Now, in the Arabic language, the word Zakah literally means purification, so it pretty much is a purification of wealth. And the fourth pillar in Islam is Sawm, which is the fasting for the entire month of Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. The final pillar is Hajj, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime mandatory pilgrimage to Mecca for all Muslims. But if you're financially and physically unable to do so, then the Hajj is overlooked. For fact number 9, God has no gender. The term for God in Arabic is Allah, and that word actually doesn't imply any gender at all. Now, in the English language, the pronoun he is commonly used for God. That's just for language purposes, but in Islam, God actually doesn't have any gender. Moving on to fact number 8, the importance of charity. In Islam, charity has 2 main forms: Zakat, which is an obligation, and the Sadaqah, which is a recommended charity. Muslims are encouraged to give sadaqah regularly in such a way that the left hand does not know what the right hand has given, as Prophet Muhammad had said. But they can give zakah more openly if other Muslims feel compelled to follow suit. So really it's about the intention. If one meets the zakat threshold, the rules state that 2.5% of one's standing wealth should be given directly to charity on an annual basis. Any other sort of giving, like the sadaqah, is to be done at your own discretion. Fact number 7, greeting other Muslims. It is recommended for Muslims to greet each other by saying Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be unto you. Now, when a Muslim greets another Muslim by saying this, then the other one replies like this: Wa alaikum assalam, which means and unto you peace. The next fact that you probably didn't know about Islam is that Allah has 99 names, or at least is referred to in 99 different ways. There are a total of 99 names of Allah, and some scholars say that of course there's more, but 99 in Islam. And each of these names describe various different attributes of God. Here are some examples. God is referred to as Al-Hadiyah, which is the guide, As-Salam, which is a source of peace, Al-Ghafar, which is all forgiving, Al-Alim, which is all knowing, Al-Wadud, which is all loving, and Al-Hadiyah, the all-knowing. Number 5 leads us to most Muslims are not actually Arab. Very surprising fact here. The Quran, which is believed to be God's word, was delivered to the Prophet Muhammad in the Arabic language. However, the vast majority of Muslims, about 80%, live outside of the Arab world. All Muslims are expected to know key terms, phrases, and invocations in Arabic, and all obligatory prayers or salah must be said in Arabic as well. So that may lead to some of the confusion that all Muslims are Arab because all of them need to know these certain Arabic terms, but that is not necessarily the case. For fact number 4, Muslims love Jesus. In Islam, Jesus, who is called Isa in Arabic, is a significant and admired figure who is mentioned in over 90 verses of the Quran. Muslims regard him as a very pivotal prophet and a divine messenger who performed many different miracles. Christians and Muslims have different perspectives on the story of Jesus. Notably, Muslims are strictly monotheistic, believing that Jesus was not God in any way, shape, or form, nor was he God's son. Rather, Muslims teach that he was born without a father. According to the Quran, and I quote, "The likeness of Isa, Jesus, before Allah is the likeness of Adam. He made him out of the dust, then said to him, be, and he was." And this reference is found in the Quran, Surah 3, verses 59. So Muslims, like Christians, believe that Jesus is the Messiah and that he'll return to earth at the end of time. The fact that number 3 has to do with converts, or is that reverts? Muslims believe that everyone is born in a state of fitra, which loosely translates to natural or primordial state. And they believe that all human beings are born with a nature to believe in God. With this in mind, converts to Islam are said to be reverting to their natural state, and they're called reverts. Although not everyone uses or agrees with the term, it is commonly used to describe anyone who was not born or raised into a Muslim family, but chose Islam as their religion later on in life. Next up, let's talk about halal foods. It is actually forbidden in Islam to consume things like alcohol, pork, carrion, blood, carnivorous animal meat, and any animal product that was not obtained or prepared under Islamic law. The Arabic term for the permitted methods of animal slaughter is dabiha. In Islam, most foods are halal by default, which means that unless something is explicitly stated in the Quran or in the Prophet Muhammad's teachings to be prohibited for consumption, well, it can be consumed. However, if someone is in desperate need of food in very limited circumstances, they are permitted to consume what is normally forbidden. And the final fact that you probably didn't know about Islam is that the marriages are contracts. A little bit different from what you might know about marriage. So in Islam, a marriage known as a nikah is a legally binding contract to which both parties must freely consent. Okay? Marriage is revocable, but it is, of course, intended to be a permanent commitment. For Muslims, Islamic law derived from the Quran governs the principles and terms of the marriage. And this is based in the teaching of the Quran that goes as follows. And among his signs is this, that he created for you mates from among yourselves, that you may live in peace and tranquility with them, and that he has put love and mercy between your hearts. Verily, there are signs for those who reflect on that. And that's found in Surah 30 verses 21 of the Quran. If there is a problem in the marriage, well, Islam encourages both parties to seek reconciliation. However, if this is not possible at all, divorce is permitted as a last resort. Now, in countries where a nikah is not recognized as a legal marriage on its own, well, the couple then has to also have a civil ceremony that is in accordance with the laws of the country that they're in. Starting at number 10, it's important to know that Islam is the name of the religion, and a person who practices Islam is known as a Muslim. The adjective Islamic usually refers to objects and places and things, not people though. So you wouldn't say the Islamic people, you would say the Muslim people. And the term Mohammedanism used to describe the faith we refer to now as Islam, but Mohammedanism is an outdated term and some find it to be very offensive. You'll often find that Muslims do not describe Islam as a religion. Islam is often referred to as a deen, which comes from the Arabic word for way of life. Muslims believe that Islam is more than just a religious belief, but it's a way of living in accordance with one's religious faith. The argument, however, arises given the use of the term religion. So to others, the word religion and the phrase way of life are exactly the same thing. But I just wanted to just mention that. All, if not most of you, have heard the term jihad. And in the Western world, the word has been misused to mean holy war. Now, the word jihad does not mean holy war. It actually means to struggle or to strive. In a religious context, it means a struggle to successfully surrender one's will to the will of God. Now, the term holy war gives a notion that the struggle is between Muslims and non-Muslims, which is totally the wrong context of jihad. There are also 6 articles of faith in Islam known as Arkan al-Iman, and these are basic beliefs that one must have in order to be considered a true Muslim. There's a belief in one God, the belief in all the true prophets of God, belief in the original scriptures revealed to Moses, David, as well as the Prophet Muhammad. There's a belief in angels, belief in the day of judgment and the hereafter, and finally the belief in predestination by God, or in other words, fate. In relation to Christianity, you may have heard that Christianity and Islam are basically the same religion, right? Well, in the Christian belief, they believe that Jesus died for the sins of humanity, and that's completely foreign in the Islamic concept. So the two religions are not in agreement based on the central teaching there. Islam teaches that one day the day of judgment will happen and every person will be resurrected and will be accountable to God for every word or deed that they've done. So a practicing Muslim is always striving to be righteous while hoping and praying for God's acceptance. Whereas in Christianity, Jesus dies as a substitute for the sins of everyone that has lived in the past, present, and future. And because of that, people have the opportunity to even be considered righteous by God in the day of judgment. So two completely different fundamental central beliefs. Muslims also follow the lunar calendar or the Hijri calendar. The lunar calendar has about 11 days less than the solar calendar. Thus, every year, the months of the lunar calendar occurs 11 days prior to the previous solar year. There are two major holidays in Islam. There's Eid al-Adha, and that is at the end of the pilgrimage to Mecca, and Eid al-Fitr is at the end of Ramadan. And by the way, Ramadan is the 9th month of the lunar calendar, when it's believed that the Prophet Muhammad received the messages of the Quran. Another interesting fact is that Muslims had created a house of wisdom, Beit ul Hikmat in Arabic, and it was active during the 9th to the 13th centuries, where both Muslims and non-Muslim scholars sought to translate the world's knowledge into Arabic. Many classic works that might have otherwise been lost were preserved in Arabic and Persian and later translated into languages like Turkish, Hebrew, as well as Latin. Only 3 more facts left, and this one, very interesting. So in Islam, Allah has 99 names, and each of the name has a meaning, and Muslims believe that God has revealed 99 names or attributes in the Quran. And it's through these names that one can come to know the Creator. And a few of these names are, obviously I'm not going to go through all 99 of them, but there's Ar-Rahman, meaning the All-Merciful. There's Al-Alim, and that means the all-knowing or the omniscient. Al-Wali means the protecting friend, patron, and helper. And finally, Ar-Razak, that's the ever-providing. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. If you want to know more, just Google names of Allah. Second last fact is that if all Qurans in the world today were destroyed, the original Arabic would still remain. This is because millions of Muslims called Hafiz, or guardians, or memorizers, depending on the context, have actually memorized the Quran letter by letter, word for word, from the beginning all the way to the end. And as a matter of fact, all chapters from the Quran recited in each of the 5 formal prayers performed daily, those are done to keep it fresh in the mind of Muslims. And the 5 prayers are the Fajr, which happens at dawn, the Duhur, that's the noon prayer, then there's the Asr, that happens in the afternoon, Maghrib is the sunset, and Isha'a happens at night. Alright guys, so although the Arab world is often seen as the historical center and heartland of Islam, Arabs actually only make up 20% of the world's Muslim population. 30% of them come from the Indian subcontinent, and the rest of them live in Asia, outside the Middle East and the West. The country with the largest Muslim population is Indonesia, and that's home to 13% of the entire Muslim population worldwide. Islam is also the largest religion in the entire continent of Africa. Mind blown, right? Yeah, I know. It's usually just always associated with Arabs, especially here in the West.